Hello and welcome to the inaugural episode of Crosshatched, where I tell you what to think. Just kidding. Doesn't it seem like everyone is trying to convince us of something? All the advertising, media spin, corporations, government, religion, and we have to spend our time sorting through it to decide what's true and what makes sense. We're exposed to 5 to 10,000 ads per day, up from only 1,500 in the 70s. That's a lot of effort trying to convince us of stuff. And it doesn't include the clickbait to suck our time. I am curious how much are deliberate lies and how much do these marketers believe their BS. Either way, there has got to be billions of dollars of lost productivity from all the time we spend trying to find the truth. Someday I'm going to estimate what percent of fake information is published by people who know it is a lie. And then we'll hunt them down and make them sit in a corner for, I don't know, the same amount of time they wasted of ours? If you've got a guess, put it in the comments. What percent of the what percent of the misinformation we wade through is put out by groups that know it is a lie? Have you noticed some companies only use the review sites that are easy to manipulate? All right, so let's say that I get enough intel from the reviews and figure out something's a scam before I paid anything. I can't help but wonder, why did you just put me through that exercise? You knew I was going to look you up. There are so many other things I could have been doing. Volunteering for sick kids. Recovering from getting sick from those kids. Dusting. Doom scrolling. Anything other than researching what your victims say. I hope that the credibility of reviews improves and that there's some aggregated summary so I can move on with my life. And if you want to start that company, I'll help you with the business plan. So the corporations want you to buy, and sometimes it seems they'll say anything. Politicians want your vote, forget their promises, or twist the truth before your eyes. Religions want to recruit you, maybe for money. Maybe they think your opinion on its veracity has bearing on your afterlife. I'm Michael Robbins, and this is a show that will plunge into the questions of belief, life after death, and the limitations of language when trying to describe the supernatural. Why is it that flexibility of opinion is praised for many things, like you don't want to be stubborn, but when it comes to religion, we're supposed to have conviction and a lack of flexibility? Little shout out to the agnostics out there who stay pliable. You're the best. The rest of us are stomping around trying to describe the existence or non existence of spirituality, or worse, trying to convince others that I'm right and you're wrong and you're dumb till you agree with me. I can't help but figure it all out. I was drawn toward questions of death at an early age when I spent years begging my parents to take me to a graveyard. When they finally did, I proudly stood by the tombstones in Northern California with my Snoopy doll. About 5 years later, I had this vivid dream that I can only describe as an astral projection. When I told my dad, he said not to go into it like it was some dangerous occult stuff. But when I went off to college, these out of body experiences began happening regularly. I later learned that if you go to sleep somewhere you're not used to going to sleep, that can be a reason that these things occur. I grew up in the same room for 18 years in Southern California, bussed off 1,000 miles to Colorado, and that's probably why it started happening. But even with this first-hand astral experience, I wouldn't say that I got 100% certainty. In some ways, I don't want that certainty because the implications are intense. If you know, you know. So the debate and the searching for answers about spirituality never ends. Others will tell you that they know 100% of some spiritual reality. We're not doing that here. A lot of times I'm going to use words that make it sound like I know certain things, but let's be clear. Your opinion is just as valid as mine. We're just people, right? I might say things like, I believe that or I think that, but do I fully 100% believe that? Maybe I say I'm 98% certain that ghosts exist, but I'm really only 82% certain and I just don't know myself well enough to give an accurate number. By the way, I just found out that 40% of Americans believe in ghosts. Thought it would be a smidge higher, especially considering this sighting Tom Mueller recently sent me.
If ghosts aren't real, explain this.
Ghosts are all around. Look how many bands have the name Ghost in them. You got my favorite, Love the Ghost, then Ghost Twin, Ghosting. I don't really care for the more popular ones. What if I encounter a ghost tomorrow, like an apparition, not a goth band, and I really hit 98% believing in ghosts? Then realizing I was only at 82% before. But a year later, I start doubting what I saw. It's good to recognize why we would start doubting what we saw. Seems like people can start questioning themselves a few years after witnessing paranormal activity, but near-death experience folks tend to be too affected to blow it off, even decades later. There's a difference between holding our commitments to ideas and being true to the commitments we make to others. I wish it were more common to quantify our beliefs as a percentage because it's often so absolute. My language, English, doesn't allow for nuances. It's black and white. Do you believe or not? Outside of speaking a little German, I only know English and can only speak to the defects of this language, like the word faith. Faith can mean you belong to one religion or another. When people ask your faith, they're asking what religion you belong to. Faith can also mean you have confidence when you could have reason to doubt. Faith is also made to sound definite, but we could have varying degrees of faith from day to day. Even atheists can vary in their certainty of nothingness. Faith is also the name of a 1981 album by The Cure, and suggests so this would be a good time to say, I love music. I've been going to dance clubs since I was a teenager, and I'll be dropping a lot of clips to satisfy my latent DJ aspirations. I follow close to 100 DJs on Twitch, and I've been in the top 10 music listeners on Twitch for 3 years in a row. I also listen to Spotify despite some issues, and there's this service that looks at your Spotify listening and ranks how obscure your music tastes are. So my Obscurify rating is 98%. So The Cure will probably be the most popular band that you get from me. What my guests mention is something else. Faith as in the strength of a belief. Some people can sound really convincing, like actors. Speaking of actors, here's a sample from a band called Actors that I've seen a couple times. That's right. Imagine if our true conviction was uncontrollably tied to the volume of our speech, and all lies were limited to a whisper. Volume is used to convey information already. Like, if you've ever listened to a sports announcer on the radio, you can tell something major is happening by the tone and volume of their voice before they've even finished saying what happened. And just because somebody sounds like they have conviction, it doesn't mean they're right. There is no natural way that we convey our certainty without explicitly saying, I'm 90% certain that aliens exist and 88% sure that they haven't been to Earth. And still, someone could say they 94% believe in Jesus and be lying. Can you imagine going to a party where everyone is wearing a polygraph on their forehead? Yeah, well, I looked it up, and some pop-up polygraph wants to come to all your parties and podcasts, bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs. Yeah, I didn't know there was a difference. The lucky girls get a bat mitzvah for their coming of age party. It's spelled B-A-T. It might not even be pronounced that way. Yeah, 12 or 13 years old might be the last time you'd want to see me on a polygraph. But since we're not walking around with audiovisual polygraphs on our foreheads, you don't know how much conviction people have in their statements. If you've seen the show, The Traitors, you know how convincing some people can be when they cry, "I'm 100% faithful!" Alan knows. Oh, and did you see there are these products based on polygraph technology with electrodes that connect to plants and make music from fluctuations in electrochemical something? The earlier versions seem to be based on acoustic guitar, but there are some new versions that are like synthwave, which I love. Check it out. And here's a clip from my favorite song last year by a synth pop band called Corinne. Twist the knife. You, like me, may have had curiosity about the meaning of life and if there's a God, a spiritual world, ghosts. Maybe you're getting older and have had more friends and lovelies dying. You think about these things. Sometimes ask, why do we have a life that largely conceals the existence of the supernatural, but still provides a few signposts? Like, we don't live in a void without any evidence of an afterlife, but we don't live in a world where alternative realities are universally witnessed and accepted. Except dreams, I guess. But yeah, we don't talk to ghosts on the daily, unless you're some rare clairvoyant. Why is it that we're given just enough evidence for what? Some to believe in the supernatural and some to dismiss it all as nonsense? I remember being a preteen kid listening to a debate between an atheist and a Christian, probably in the early 80s. It was adorable how the Christian had conviction in their old book, but I had to admit, the atheist had a better argument. Now, with YouTube and our access to testimonials of near-death experiences, NDEs, I think it's coming back the other way. Don't you have to construct a lot of denial to ignore thousands of testimonials? Listen, babe, I know it's early in the series for a Camera 2 debut. I'm sorry if the denial comment offended you. It's not your fault. I mean, all these religions and their backstories and these supernatural beings and stuff, it sounds weird. I don't know why it was constructed that way. If one of these faiths is correct, I agree. It's very strange. I think we need to question both sides. Ironically, there are large churches that also try to disavow NDE testimonials because they don't fit in their narrative of salvation through faith alone. In 2014, the Southern Baptist Convention, the nation's largest Protestant denomination, passed a formal resolution. Yes, they took the time to pass a formal resolution cautioning against relying on near-death experiences to understand the afterlife, urging instead a focus on the Bible. Yeah, they don't like hearing about non-Christians being welcomed by Jesus. Some have even suggested that NDEs are a deception manufactured by the devil. So it's interesting how atheists and some Christian groups have this in common. They both want to deny thousands of testimonials instead of considering that maybe they changed their minds. People have had NDEs since cardiopulmonary resuscitation was invented centuries ago. But we've only had internet camera phones and YouTube for a couple of decades. So our access to these personal accounts of the other side have only now just exploded. Unfortunately, it's even harder to find honest testimonials from real people because you have fake AI near death experience videos made to look real that are also trying to convince us of a certain reality. And these liars don't even care about your religion. They're taking they're taking advantage of your thirst for certainty of an afterlife to get your views. In future episodes, I'll be talking about the hundreds of NDE videos I've watched, particularly those posted before AI was so realistic. Until then, look for those that are live interviews with hosts and not those with a bunch of images cycling through. Because, yeah, these fake testimonials are being created in mass by sleazy streamers marketing fiction as a true NDE story for the clicks. But I'll give you this. Even the genuine NDE videos are not totally consistent. But they are consistent enough to make you think it's not just a misfiring brain at the time of death or some DBT-induced trip. And it's not just what they say about the other side. When some come back to life and are able to share information they shouldn't know, such as things happening on the other side of the hospital. And this has happened so many times, it would take a lot of denial, or vodka, to dismiss it all. It's ironic that while the quantity of NDE testimonials provide greater evidence for faith, and often for Jesus, but church affiliation is declining. Judaism is up, Islam is up, Christianity is down. I sometimes wonder if we've been withheld from supernatural evidence. And then now, as the NDE testimonials flood in, the church is also declining. Check out this piece from 2019. The church needs to pivot. It says in 1950, 95% belonged to the church. In 2018, 70% belonged. And projects in 2030, only 50% will belong. And continues that the final congregant, by the looks of it, will turn off the church light sometime around 2052, probably even sooner. And they've got a chart here. And yeah, personally, I think that's a little dramatic to suggest that it's like completely going away. But this line here cracked me up. The church faces many of the same challenges that old industries do. Poor product fit. And then talked about digitalization and such, but wow. That was really funny. I don't know what to make of this, but yeah, that's, fourth zine. Jonas Fourth. Right. And some people will say, oh, well, the spiritualism, that's increasing. And, maybe it is. Here, I'm looking at Google Trends. Google Trends isn't everything, but it is curious to see that the searches for Christianity, they kind of hit the bottom around 2016, maybe 2018. But it's up, albeit volatile, in the past few years. Spirituality, slightly up. Slightly up. So, yeah, I think that the statistics on church membership and church attendance are more telling and provable than, Google Trends, which tells you, all right, well, how many people, in the United States are searching for Christianity versus searching for spirituality. I'm going to switch it over to worldwide real quick. Yeah, it looks pretty similar. Yeah, shows this trough around 2018 for Christianity, and then some growth. Don't know what to make of it. So at this point, you may be wondering, am I a Christian? Is this a Christian podcast? Is believing in Jesus enough? What if I say I 100% believe in Jesus, but I know I only 98.2% believe in him? Notwithstanding my lie, many will say I am not a Christian and call me a heretic because I think some Hindus, Muslims, agnostics, and even some atheists will reach a higher level of heaven than me. Yeah, I think that some non Christians are of such pure heart they will elevate to the celestial heaven while I'm kicking rocks in the lower heaven, assuming I get there. And I probably lost 72% of my audience right there. And if you're still listening, welcome to Crosshatched. We're going to have fun here and be fearless. Some fear? Well, we'll get back to that. Okay, so there's this guy called the Godless Guide, and he is my favorite mad atheist. Check it out.
Then what I have to say shouldn't bother you at all. I'm just some random atheist on the internet. If I'm wrong, if I'm uneducated, if I'm confused, or even if I'm a failed pastor, which I'm not, then I shouldn't matter to you at all.
No.
I should be completely irrelevant to
Okay,
you.
well, don't be so
But
hard on
instead,
yourself.
what I see is so much emotional investment. I see insults and age comparisons and personal attacks, and you guys
I'm
questioning my
sorry.
education. And that's what I find to be so interesting. Because people who are truly confident in what they believe don't feel threatened by disagreement. Secure faith doesn't need to correct or to warn
Wow,
or
you're
to
so knowledgeable
attack
about
strangers
faith,
online
Mr.
to survive.
Atheist.
So let me ask this to you again. If your belief in Jesus is so solid, then why does what I have to say matter so much to you? Because secure beliefs, they're not threatened by disagreement.
No.
And when your reaction gets so personal so quickly, it shows me that it's not about the
Poor
truth.
guy. All right,
It's just
we're
about
going
your
to
own
give him
insecurity.
a like
Christians,
and a follow.
we need to be honest.
And
If you were truly secure in
we'll
your
come
Christian
back
faith,
to him. Yes, that's great. Thanks for the validation of the strength of my faith. I often think my faith is pretty weak, but considering how little you bother me, maybe my faith is stronger than I think. I'm sorry some people trash talk you. They probably believe that if you don't call yourself a Christian, you're some filthy heathen unworthy of redemption. Too much time on their hands. Shout out to Sticks. You know, the 3 times I've had my palms read, I don't know which one. They said each of those 3 times that I should be a minister. And all the clergy I know are often asking when I'm going to get ordained. Raising 3 kids on my own doesn't leave a lot of time for seminary, but that doesn't have to stop me from being an uneducated lunatic questioning everything. And don't worry, I'll bring some intelligent guest speakers on and we'll see what we can learn from them. Do you ever read these threads of people debating on the Bible, and on one hand they seem very well read, and on the other they can be incredibly stubborn? I know I'm going to get flamed by them. And maybe they don't even get this far. They've already hit pause to write in the comments how I'm going to hell. Well, isn't that special? They aren't going to like this either. I had this minor miracle with the Bible and regard it as magical. So I don't have a problem with the idea of some parts of the Bible being flawed. I know, heresy, right? I think some people have to see it as 100% perfect in order to revere it as holy. But in some ways, it's already proven itself to me. I don't have to have faith because of this experience. So it doesn't matter if some parts are wrong. If you have gold covered with soil and leaves, you still have gold. Find the good. I'll do a separate show on what happened to me, but it was so startling, I thought about it every day for a year. In some ways, I was trying to deny it, like the fear of faith, when I'm preaching evidence for faith. It was mind-blowing. But yeah, it's liberating to accept you don't have to throw baby Jesus out with the bathwater. Our second guest will have opinions on what parts of the Bible are more godly than others. And yes, we'll definitely be throwing some other faiths into the discussion and see who else is using faith to create cultish atmospheres. I did get ordained in spiritual humanism online to perform a wedding, but I'm not a trained theologian. Everything I say should be taken with a grain of salt. There are hundreds of thousands of people who will talk circles around me, selectively quoting Bible verses from memory to make a point. And more than trying to prove a point, it could be shrouded in elitism and a desire to dominate. And like I said, what if that part of the Bible they're quoting is flawed or misinterpreted? Then they're thumping away on some language as if it's gospel, but it actually isn't. Yeah, the camel through the eye of the needle quote. Camel was a misinterpretation for a sailor's rope. This flaw doesn't change my experience with the scripture. Doesn't mean that the book is unholy. I'm not even saying the Bible is the only book that is holy. So let's put a pause on the dogma, who's right, who's wrong, and ask, why do we keep trying to figure it all out? I keep trying to figure it all out. As Emily Autumn so beautifully puts it,
the obsession with death becomes a way of life. Alive, alive, alive.
when the obsession with death becomes a way of life. Wow. That's from her song Dead is the New Alive. I swear, the questions about spirituality are like trying to balance a balance sheet to me. I'm in finance, and if I ever find a balance sheet that's not balanced, I can't just let it go. Yeah, life is like a massive puzzle. But unlike a balance sheet, we're probably not going to reach 100% certainty here. The Buddha and Muhammad may have. Maybe I just need more mustard seeds. I learned this word recently called ontology. Ontology is the philosophical study of existence, asking what is real and what exists. Ontology of religion says, what do you believe about the nature of God? And if you can't be consistent with that, you don't really have a real religion. You have a man-made invention of some sort. Well, religion kind of is too, right? And doesn't consistency imply dogma and being stubborn? What do you believe about the nature of God, huh? What if I believe that beliefs are transient? What if my core belief centers around accessing heaven and not the nature of God? Can I separate them? What if some aspects of belief stay the same and others change? Just bounce from religion to religion? Well, no, because people create communities and they'll make compromises within their denomination. Is everyone in that church or mosque completely aligned in their belief? Probably not, but they often pretend to be. Maybe their book says what their religion believes about the nature of God, but only 2% of the members fully align in their hearts 100% with the doctrine. While being steadfast can be admirable, what if changing religions is what elevates their faith? The flexibility goes for me too. The things that I learn on this show could change my mind about something, and that's okay. It's more important to keep asking questions and building relationships than to be right about it. Anyway, back to the college astral projections. Some were conscious, most were unconscious, but it is this kind of first-hand experience that a lot of us are looking for. Is there another dimension, or are we destined to be stardust? I don't try to astral project anymore because it kind of freaks me out. Like, we can think we want to touch or taste the other side, but oh, not too close. When we get it, it's like, that's okay. I'm good. I'm good, thanks. I think that's what drives some people away from black magic. It's all fun and games until the demons start waking you up in the dead of night. When you think, okay, well, what has pushed people away from Christianity? They'll probably say, people being judgmental, and thinking that they're better than others and not really so much about love. But one of these two defies the laws of physics, and that would be demons. I still have like a minor astral projection about every 7 years. Like I'll feel that distinct floaty feel, like I'm on a raft of water with ripples going through my body. It certainly enhanced my confidence in a spiritual realm, but it didn't stop me from asking questions. Maybe you're thinking, if only I had an astral projection, then I would believe. Sure, you'd believe more, but the mind is pretty crafty in creating seeds of suspicion. We're going to play in this space. The forces of faith versus the logic of doubt. And what are the motivations? What I find a little irritating is that some regard astral projection as occult or evil. But when it's something that happens to you, is it fair to say it's bad? I mean, Tom Waits says you're innocent when you dream, right? Incidentally, astral projection is in fact what brought me to the church. So, in my research of out of body experiences, OOBEs, I found a couple quotes from this 18th century mystic named Emanuel Swedenborg. Born in 1688 in, you guessed it, Sweden, he lived until 1772. After being a renowned scientist and inventor, he began having what I describe as extensive out of body experiences. And he wrote tomes on what he saw and heard, like 40,000 pages, of which 14,000 were published. I was at the University of Colorado Boulder at the time, and these books were in the basement where the bookshelves were squished together and you had to hit some buttons at the end of the road to make the aisle open. And yeah, when you walk down that newly parted aisle, you're going to have a new fear unlocked of being crushed. But I guess, yeah, there's worse ways to die than being smushed by old rare books. And I did work in the preservation department of the library a few years later. A lot of what Swedenborg wrote hundreds of years ago is now being confirmed by near-death experience testimonials, such as Jesus is real and your religion does not matter nearly as much as charity and love toward other people. It may be why you haven't heard of Swedenborgianism, because the members know that your religion isn't what gets you into heaven, so they're not very active recruiting folks. Swedenborg flames salvation through faith alone in almost every one of his books. Apparently, it was a problem in his time as well. And some Christians are still putting emphasis on belief instead of charity and love toward the neighbor. That is what this podcast is going to be about. Because I don't think Jesus wants his love to be diminished and treated as if only self-declared Christians enter heaven regardless of how they treated people here on earth. They think I'm a heretic, but maybe they're the heretics for making God out to be this monster who punishes people in hell for being born into the wrong religion. Swedenborg has a lot of duality in his writings, such as faith and charity being related, perhaps two sides of the same coin. But, in volume 1 of his Arcana Celesta, he says something to the effect of, charity wants to be with faith as long as faith doesn't put itself first. So there is value and beauty in faith, but love is primary, despite what you may have heard. Even still, it has been said that charity is blind without faith, and faith is powerless without charity. Though I prefer faith without works is dead. I should have a song for that, but I don't. The internet was pretty new in the early 90s when I started reading Swedenborg and having these astral projections, so it took me a couple years of studying him before I realized that there's a Swedenborgian church. It's founded in 1787 and attracted the likes of Johnny Appleseed and Helen Keller. And if you don't like the word church, the one in Seattle is Swedenborgianspiritualcommunity.org. There are various links to on-demand content and live interactive discussions. Even though this obscure sect is teeny tiny, it's old enough to have had a schism. Yeah, there's more than one Swedenborgian church. Swedenborg.org is called Convention, and it's the version that I follow more closely. But yeah, it's a beautiful thing, finding your religion as opposed to being born into it. And because Swedenborg demotes the significance of belief so much, Swedenborgians don't put a lot of pressure on people having the same opinion on things. There are even a few things Swedenborg wrote that don't work for me, that I think he got wrong. But maybe it's my misunderstanding. It doesn't really matter. The point is that the dogma is not so important. It doesn't matter if we disagree on the details. In which politics were a bit more like this. In a way, Swedenborgians are a bit like Quakers who will engage in discussions without excommunicating people with differing opinions. At some point, we'll get into why some religions are so obsessed with members believing a certain thing. And it's not just Christians. It's funny to me how some people get really wrapped around the axle about certain beliefs. Original sin, the Trinity, virgin birth. And sure, it can be an interesting discussion sometimes, but does your opinion on it really matter if you're a heartless dictator sending thousands to their death? I think not. That if we were to say Jesus is the only way to heaven, since when was it required to accept this while living on earth? Why can't people discover and accept Jesus on the other side? Because that's what a lot of NDEs indicate. Anyone can have a post-mortem come-to-Jesus moment. Amen. Faith and conviction can be a beautiful thing. My first interview features a minister who definitely earned her faith. And I'll tell you, there will be a few trigger warnings. Eating disorders, SA, demons. But it was important for me to start Crosshatched by honoring faith before deconstructing the concept of salvation through faith alone. It's the one thing that will be consistent here, that the way you treat people has more bearing on your afterlife than the name of your God. And if you're someone who doesn't like hearing that, ask yourself, is that what you've been told how it works? Or would you believe differently if no one told you what to think? Thanks for watching the first episode. Find links in the description. And remember, you can be detached and still subscribe to Crosshatched.